Welcome back to the Sooner Nation podcast. This is the part where I get to ask you to like and subscribe. Thanks so much for hanging with this. Thanks for being a part of what we do, both on the website, heartland-sports.com, and here on the podcast. If you're catching us on Spotify, if you're catching us on YouTube, if you're catching us on TuneIn, Apple Podcasts, wherever you're finding us, I want to say thank you and ask you if you could just give us that subscription. It helps, it helps, it helps. I want to take, for the second part of the podcast, I want to take a step back and look again at Saturday. Let's talk about what happened. Because, obviously, we didn't know. We didn't know about John Mateer. But even with that knowledge we have now, it didn't feel like just another win. It felt like a referendum, right? To me, it felt like a referendum on everything that Brent Venables has been building since he took over this program. That 24-17 win, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't flashy. But it was exactly that kind of gritty, physical, SEC power type game that Oklahoma was told that they couldn't win. And we knew, everybody knows. It is no secret. It is no secret they would not have won this type of game in 2024. But they didn't just survive. They were able to impose their will. And it's the second time against a top 25 team that they've put together a late drive that finishes the team. But let's start with the defense, because that's the story. That's where this game turned. 9 quarterback sacks. 9. That is an insane number in any game, let alone against a ranked opponent from your conference. What Todd Bates and Miguel Chavis have built is this is a defensive front that just, it looks like a factory, right? It doesn't matter who's in there. And, Venables told the guys before the game that the only non-negotiable is that the storyline had to say, y'all played your butt off. And in Brent Venables' own words after the game, mission accomplished. But here's some things that stands out to me. Most importantly on the defensive side is that 8 different players, 8 different defenders recorded at least a half a sack. So this wasn't I know everybody knows about R. Mason Thomas. The second half turn with R. Mason Thomas. But this wasn't just about one superstar. This game showed depth and a relentless effort that just kind of breaks an opponent in the fourth quarter. And man, that's what you want. That's what we had hoped for. That's what Brent Venables preached when he arrived 4 years ago. And now we're seeing it come to fruition. But then there is John Mateer, right? And look, the injury, we talked about it. But he deserves his flowers for what he did. It wasn't a clean day. We know about the fumble, and understanding a broken hand maybe gives more insight into that. But when it mattered the most, broken hand and all, 6 for 7 on the go-ahead drive, and he finished it himself with a 9-yard touchdown run, which was, by the way, the longest run of the game for Oklahoma. This all comes in his first SEC start. The dude delivered. And that's the kind of moment that kind of galvanizes the locker room, that rallies everybody. Go back and listen to the post-game comments. How many of those guys just said, he's straight up a dog, right? They love their quarterback. And honestly, for Mateer, that's the kind of moment that you dream about. As a quarterback, you dream about the game-winning drive. And not only that, you dream about delivering, being the guy who delivers, pulls the trigger. And that's what he did. And if you want to find some hidden gems in Saturday's performance, I think you go back to Jaren Kanak. I don't know. We keep saying, we have to say it. Converted linebacker turned tight end. Because every week, it's like, this guy was a linebacker. And it's just like, it becomes more and more unbelievable how talented, how athletic he actually is. Because this was conference play. over 60 yards receiving. They put him in key packages. He's learning to block and be effective, way more effective than what we saw from this position last year. He's helping protect that edge. I mean, he is becoming literally, I believe, a Swiss Army knife for this offense. And I think four games into the season, now that we have actually seen him, contribute, come through in conference play, this guy becomes one of the major stories of the season. Now, we got to talk about Cortland Gilroy. We got to talk about that secondary. Because it has been, through 3 weeks, solid, super solid. After the 4th week, you say, man, it's a work in progress, right? Because you got a freshman in Gilroy who learned on the fly. And, I love what he said after the game. He didn't show defeat. He said, that was a day I'd like to have back. But you got to, I think in moments like this, you got to look back at Brent Venables and his track record. Because he's the guy that more times than not, those mistakes will turn into growth. And even though Gilroy, there were a couple of big plays given up by this defense. But also the front seven is the type of unit that really, it covers a lot of sins, right? And also you look at that sideline and you see that Eli Bowen should be back very soon. And I said this in the opening segment. I think another underappreciated storyline that we don't talk enough about is special teams. Tate Sandell he nailed 3 field goals. Grayson Miller flipped the field with a 54-yard punt. Average. That was the average. And when you're looking at a 1-score game, those are the hidden yards. Those are the kind of the points that really matter in the game when you're talking about the field goals. And that's the kind of thing that you only notice when you're losing. But it's a huge, honestly, it was a huge reason Oklahoma walks off the field with the win. And there's no denying that the offense has some work to do, especially in light of the quarterback situation. 32 rushing yards on 26 carries. That's just, we all know. Everybody knows. It is not a secret. That's not going to cut it. That's not going to win a game against LSU. That's not going to win a game in Knoxville. That's not going to win a game in Tuscaloosa. But even with that struggle, Oklahoma, and I think this is why we can have hope in Michael Hawkins. Because even in that struggle, Oklahoma found ways to move the ball. Isaiah Sategna, 9 catches, 127 yards. Those are career highs. And I don't really want to open back up the debate. I think the SEC owes an apology, honestly, to Oklahoma. Because there was no huddle, and the SEC said they huddled. There was no substitution, and the SEC said there was a substitution infraction. They ran the play by the officials before the game. Sategna checked with the sideline official just to get lined up. This is, if you want the truth, I said I didn't want to open up this can, but I'm going to. This was Auburn playing defensively so terrible, such a terrible mistake in alignment for the defense, that it makes more sense to the office that Oklahoma did something wrong than to say, man, that defense was just. If this happens against like Mississippi State, if it happens against Kentucky, if it happens against Florida, there's no statement from the SEC. There's no statement from the office. But because it happened against a top 25 team, they're like, man, we can't have our top teams playing such terrible defense. It had to have been something else. And it makes more sense to describe it that way than just own up what it was. No one paid attention on Auburn's defense. And you look at what happened in the polls. You look at the fact that Auburn fell You look at the fact that Oklahoma rose. If anybody believed that it was trickery, if anybody believed that it was bad, if it was wrong, they would not have punished Auburn by dropping them out, and they would not have rewarded Oklahoma by moving them up. So this gives the Tigers fan base something to cry about. And it gives the SEC a chance to cover their tails. But the truth is, Satina was huge on Saturday. And Oklahoma took advantage of a terrible defensive alignment and executed it perfectly. And again, the big picture here, in my opinion, is that this was a culture win. And you've got a program that's now 4-0, 1-0 in conference play, and you've got ranked wins over Michigan and Auburn. And it's one thing to rack up, gaudy numbers against group of 5 opponents or lower. I mean, you got Arch Manning flexing on Sam Houston. Yeah. Everyone's intimidated now. But it's a whole different thing to stand toe-to-toe with a ranked SEC roster and wear them down. It's another thing to stand toe-to-toe with a ranked Big Ten roster and wear them down. And the final 3 Auburn snaps, of that game, tackle for loss by David Stone, sack by Grayson Halton, and then the R. Mason Thomas safety. I mean, look, that's not just luck. That's something that's built into this culture. That's who this team is. And there's some intangibles in here that they're frustrating to me, but they also give me hope moving forward. Because, again, Oklahoma lost the turnover battle. They've lost the turnover battle every week. Every week. They're 4-0 in record, but they're 0-4 against the turnover battle. But they've only given up 9 points. Only 9 points off of the turnovers all season long. And they haven't, we know this story, they haven't forced a turnover themselves, but yet they still rank top 5 nationally in major defensive categories. And so that tells you 2 things. One, this defense, it plays clean. It plays assignment sound football. And then the second thing is that the ceiling is going to even get higher once the takeaways begin to arrive. And I don't think we can talk about this game without mentioning Jackson Arnold coming back to Norman, and he finds out firsthand how much his old program has changed. But I mean, look, I think he's changed as well. I think he still has talent. But man, 9 sacks, minus 11 rushing yards on 21 carries, that's a long day at the office. Yeah, and I think the hugs after the game were genuine, but so was Oklahoma's message here. It is, we've moved on. And here's a random thought while we're at it. Is this the deepest collection of defensive linemen Oklahoma has had? I mean, I don't even know back in the early 2000s if they were this deep. We're talking about rotating 10 guys. 10 guys, and they're all producing. Imagine, you go back in the modern era since 2000, and you talk about defensive linemen. I think two names like immediately rise to the top, right? Gerald McCoy and Tommy Harris. Can you imagine if Gerald McCoy and Tommy Harris played together on the same defensive line? Because I think that's what you've got in Jaden Jackson and David Stone. And then you add in there Grayson Halton. And then you add in there Marvin Jones Jr. And then you add in there R. Mason Thomas. P.J. Adebawore. This is a crazy deep defensive front. And they're all producing. That's something that can sustain you into the month of November. So, I mean, you got to think about quarterback play becoming the front and center of what this team is moving forward. But don't underestimate momentum. Because Oklahoma's going into the bye week 4-0 You got Kent State coming up on the other side. So that's, you're looking at 5-0 before you head to Texas. And that's the best you can hope for. That was what you wanted to achieve. You're going into Red River rivalry undefeated, battle-tested, and believing in yourself. And when you look at what Brent Venables said after the game, proud of our players, the determination, the resolve, the grit, the ability to overcome. They keep fighting back. They keep striking. And Saturday proved that Oklahoma can win ugly games. We can see them win late games, and they can win in the trenches. So I think regardless of who the quarterback is, that's a recipe not just for a bounce-back season, but that's a recipe, I believe, to become a legitimate contender in the SEC. So the wins may not be all pretty, but they're showing something more important than style points. They're showing that the culture that Brent Venables has been preaching is real. And I think this is a team that it's not just on its way to surviving in the SEC. I think this is a team that could legitimately thrive in the SEC. And I want to talk to you about rankings. We'll bring that up here in this final segment.